All right, today we're going to go behind the walls of a hospital to uncover a system that's so critical, just one single mistake could be absolutely catastrophic. So let's figure out what it is. So just take a second to think about that. What could it be? You know, it's not the big flashy MRI machines or the fancy surgical robots. No, it's this invisible network that, quite literally, delivers life itself. Let's go trace this lifeline right to the source. So what we're talking about here are medical gas systems. And a good way to think of them is like the veins and arteries of the hospital building itself, this really complex circulatory system that's hidden just behind the drywall. Now, these aren't just simple pipes. This one little outlet you see on the wall is actually a gateway to this huge network that delivers pure oxygen to a patient who's on a ventilator. It powers surgical tools with compressed air, and it provides the vacuum that's needed for so many critical procedures. It is absolutely fundamental to modern medicine. And this right here, this is the single greatest danger, a cross-connection. This is the nightmare scenario. It's when, for example, a pipe that's supposed to be carrying oxygen gets hooked up to, say, the nitrous oxide line. Preventing this is the installer's biggest fear and the verifier's #1 mission, because honestly, the consequences are just unthinkable. So who makes sure this never, ever happens? Well, our story really has two guardians. And the first one is the installer. Their job is to physically build this entire network and then, right away, put it through this series of, well, brutal trials that are designed to find any weakness at all. And listen, these are not just steps on some checklist. They are grueling tests for a brand new system. Before anybody else even gets to look at it, the installer has to prove that these pipes are perfectly clean, that they're strong, and that everything is routed exactly the way it should be. So the whole process starts with something called a blowdown. They basically blast high-pressure nitrogen through all the pipes. And to prove it's clean, they hold a white cloth over the outlet. If even one tiny speck of dust or oil shows up on that cloth, it fails. The system has to be perfectly clean from the very, very beginning. Okay, so once the pipes are totally clean, it's time to see if they can actually handle the pressure. And we're not talking about just a little bit of pressure here. We are talking about forces that would completely shred a normal pipe. The installer's very first test pressurizes the system to at least 150 pounds per square inch. That's 1.5 times its normal working pressure, and while it's under that stress, every single joint is checked for leaks. Now, to put that into perspective for you, your car tire holds about 30 psi. This test subjects the brand new piping to 5 times that pressure. That's just how robust this system has to be, right from the get-go. And it doesn't even stop there. The installer then has to run a 24-hour endurance test. For an entire day, the system is held under pressure, and for the vacuum lines, they're held under vacuum. And over those 24 hours, the pressure cannot drop by more than 0.5%. It's an unbelievably strict standard, and someone has to be there to witness it. So after the installer's trials are done, our second guardian arrives, the verifier. This is an independent third-party expert. And their job is not to trust the installer's work. No, their job is to scrutinize, to question, and to meticulously verify every single component. This separation of duties is really the bedrock of the entire safety system. You have the installer, who builds and does the initial brute force tests. Then, the verifier comes in with a totally fresh set of eyes to conduct the final, precision-based tests that will ultimately give the system its seal of approval. And the verifier's process is so methodical. They're not just looking for big leaks anymore. They are looking for absolute perfection. They check every single label, they test every alarm, and they confirm that the gas that comes out is exactly what it's supposed to be. And this part is so crucial. All of this happens before the walls are sealed up. This is the final opportunity for human eyes to physically see the concealed piping. The verifier makes sure every pipe is labeled correctly, which prevents that dreaded cross-connection once it's hidden from view forever. So now we arrive at the final checks. And this is where the standard goes from being extremely high to just absolutely uncompromising. This is the final guarantee that the system is 100% safe for patients. 0%? Yep. Unlike the installer's 24-hour test that allows for that tiny 0.5% drop, the verifier performs a 10-minute standing pressure test where the required standard is absolute perfection. If that pressure gauge drops by even the tiniest fraction, the system fails. Period. End of story. And finally, the verifier confirms total isolation.
They pressurize each gas line one by one to make sure no pressure bleeds over into any other system. Then, they trigger every single alarm to make sure the hospital staff will be warned if there's any problem. And then, one last purge test to make sure the gas is perfectly pure.
So from the installer's brute force trials all the way to the verifier's demand for absolute perfection, this entire process is this silent, invisible symphony of safety protocols. It's the trust that you place in that wall outlet, without ever knowing about the guardians who worked so hard to make it safe.
So the next time you find yourself in a hospital room, you'll still just see that small outlet on the wall. But now, you'll also see what's really behind it. All those layers of protection, the unseen guardians, and that relentless pursuit of perfection that keeps every single one of us safe.